Willkommen beim Podcast Entdecke deinen Hund. Ich bin Sarina Kriechbaum-Young, ich bin Hunde- und Erwachsenentrainerin und ich lebe in Österreich, in der Südsteiermark, mit meinem Mann, Kenne, und mit meinen 2 Hunden, Tuko und Kaya. Ich leite die Hundeschule für Hundeverhalten und Hundetrainerinnen mit Fokus auf Welpen- und Junghunde und Nasenarbeit. Dabei unterstütze ich Menschen mit ihren Hunden sowohl persönlich als auch online und ich bilde Hundetrainerinnen aus. Mein Motto ist gemeinsam statt Gehorsam mit dem Ziel, Hunde besser zu verstehen, zu respektieren und von ihnen zu lernen, anstatt sie zu reinen Befehlsempfängern zu reduzieren. We are talking today about aggression and aggression in dogs and in humans.
Well, first, who is we?
Well, I was going to get there,
Okay.
but you can introduce yourself if you like, because I have a special guest today.
Yes, of course, special.
My special husband is here, Mr. Young. This is all recorded. This is all going to go online.
Cut. Start over. You better take 2.
So we're here together today just because we have a lot of conversations about dogs. And one of the things we've been talking about for a couple of days was the topic of aggression. And how it came up, I think, was that you hear people talk about, this dog is aggressive, or there's certain breeds are aggressive. And we feel like, it's the labeling of the dog aggressive is something that bothers you. You said you can't hear it anymore. You said to hear people say that dogs are aggressive. And then the discussion went from there to what do we call it then? Well, and what does it mean actually?
Well, here's the stigmatism that I feel that aggression is associated as a character trait more so than as a reaction to a circumstance. Mm-hmm. Like we heard somebody talking about how they had to put their dog to sleep because he bit a child who took his food. The child took food from the dog and the dog bit the child. Okay, and this is like an infant. I don't know how old.
Yeah, as a toddler or something. Yeah.
And
old enough to take food from a dog, so it has to be.
The dog was labeled as aggressive, and they put the dog down. And with such tears, and they were talking about how the dog is my everything, but I just can't take the chance with my child. Well, in my opinion, it's the lacking of the parent who's not, guiding their child or restricting the access of the child to the dog, or how stupid do you have to be to have your child around a dog with food? Yeah. And
the idea, this idea of taking food from the dog is something that you hear often. I hear people often say, like, well, my dog has to be ready to give up his food. That's normal. I'm always thinking, like, why? And then yesterday I told you about videos I saw of somebody doing pranks. A guy who was walking around and people who are eating on the street, he just goes over and grabs their food, and how they react. It's very similar to how a dog will react, to how I will react if you just take my food from me. Well, I'm going to go after you too.
The identifying aggression is such an interesting scenario because I hear how people say, they talk about the breeds. They talk about how, this breed is more aggressive and this. It's not about being more aggressive. I think it's more about the size or strength of the dog, and the trait with regard to size is genetic, whereas when you're talking about aggression, it's situational. It's more about the amount of damage a dog will do, more so than the dog actually being aggressive.
That's what people
is it an appropriate response to
well,
appropriate
from the dog's
actions.
view, it's always an appropriate response.
Yeah,
obviously.
I agree.
And that's the thing, like it's more a response or a reaction to something more so than the dog's conscious decision to go outside and say, I'm going to be aggressive today.
Well, here's what's funny to me. Okay, I was curious about aggression.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they define aggression as a feeling of anger or antipathy resulting in hostile or violent behavior, readiness to attack or confront.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I always hear about aggression, but aggression is a result of a situation or a circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
I never hear about the result because it's a reaction rather than an action.
It's reactive instead of proactive, maybe. Yeah?
Exactly.
And I thought interestingly for you, what you found is that it is behavior, but
Well,
did you say feeling also?
Well, here's the thing. They define behavior as the way in which one acts or conducts oneself, especially towards others.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's pretty much anything.
So everything is a behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is, but
yeah,
behavior is specific to the circumstance.
Yeah.
And when you talk about aggression, I don't know if you can define aggression as such as that it is a character trait, as it's inbred in the dog. You know, it's like I'm
sure you can't. I'm sure that because you see so many different kinds of dogs every day in your daycare. You have to deal with aggression sometimes. I don't know. Do you?
I don't know if I would call it aggression. There are times when I see it as over robust play. You know, I think I've seen some circumstances where there was dominance. But I don't see the aggression because the dogs aren't running away screaming. You know, there's some education
do you
going
deal
on
with
sometimes.
Fighting, for example?
I have dealt with fights, and the circumstance was, for all intents and purposes, my fault. I knew the situation. I knew what the trigger was, and the dogs were fighting, or there was one dog trying to discipline another, and the dog was not going to allow itself to be disciplined. So a fight broke out, and the circumstances were that I was not on top of the circumstance. I didn't read the body language correctly. I had separation, but
it wasn't really safe or something. It wasn't.
A dog got out, basically pushed through one of the gates.
Yeah. It wasn't completely locked or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they ran to the front, and another dog was excited, and she doesn't like...
Two excited dogs at the same time is never a good idea.
And the circumstance was, it got more aggressive.
Yeah.
And I define it as a situational aggressive behavior. Because
the dogs know each other, and in other situations, there was no aggression at all.
No.
Yeah.
And I, at that particular point in time, was bitten, but... You know, I actually have heard, you know, the question of trust. You know, how
once you get bitten, you lose
bitten
all
by
trust.
Your dog, and you lose all trust.
What happened to you? Did you lose all your trust in the dog?
Well, I have to say I was not happy.
Okay.
You know, I was bitten. I had to go to the hospital and all that other good stuff.
Yes.
But
got your shot.
Yeah, I got shot too. I appreciated the doctor found the longest needle he could find.
It hurt more than a bite, probably.
Pretty much. But the circumstances were that I basically sat down and reevaluated the situation and found out that the cause of the situation was me.
Yeah.
Because I typically check and double check.
Yeah, that the gates are locked.
And you know, this was my failure.
Yeah.
And it's not easy as a dog trainer, as a dog care professional, to admit that I was bitten and it was my fault.
Yeah. But that's why I find it also so upsetting, these people who put their dog down because he can't even, I don't even know. I think with biting also there's different degrees of bites also, because if it's a scratch or if it's a bite, it's also a little bit different. And I think in this case, the dog didn't really bite the child in that sense. And then to say we have no other choice but to put him down, I find it just very upsetting, actually, not considering that it's their own fault. And not thinking that there's a lot of other options of things you can do.
There is a term that we used to use a lot when it comes to dealing with dogs when I was doing my training, and it's called Ass You Me.
Assume.
Yes. When you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. And I think there are too many assumptions that are being made with regard to my dog is great with kids. Under which circumstances?
Yeah.
My dog's great with cats.
Well, that has to do with these breed descriptions that you read everywhere.
Well,
when you look for a breed of dog and then you go to certain, websites or books or something, I mean, let any breeder talk about the dog that they're breeding, they will always tell you this is the best dog ever. For any family, for kids. But the thing is, no dog is born with just I think, family gene to say, like, I love kids,
It's there are so many assumptions. This is a violent dog. I don't know how many staffs, pit bulls, mastiffs, all kinds of dogs that I've dealt with I was told that these are aggressive breeds that, you got to be careful. I have to say I've been bitten by more Chihuahuas than I care to recall, because these dogs are as frustrated as any dog that I can imagine. The toy dogs are...
I think that's a key word, the frustration you just mentioned. That's often something that is a precursor to an aggressive behavior, is when dogs feeling really frustrated.
Well, there are so many factors that lead to aggression.
Yeah.
It's
frustration is one. And they lead to aggressive behavior, you should say, not to an aggressive dog. And there's a difference between an aggressive behavior and an aggressive dog. Doesn't exist, actually.
Everything is appropriate to the situation. So it's situational reactions that are split-second choices that are made. And you make a bad choice, and who are you going to blame? It's always the dog's fault. It's always... there are two dogs that got into a fight. Yeah. Well, did you see the dog coming? Yeah. What other, things did you have? What other tools did you have at your disposal? Yeah. One of the things that I find that's very frustrating is typically it's the owner that has a limited tool set, meaning they don't have the tools to deal with particular circumstances. So, like, you have a baby and you have a dog. Okay, here's a tool. Keep them separate. Okay, until the baby understands what a dog is, until the dog understands, they're great together, and this and you making a wrong assumption under those circumstances, and there could be a lot of things that could go wrong with regard to that.
Oh yeah.
But one of the things that I find so incredibly frustrating for me is when you label aggression. I think of, I went riding today and I rode aggressively. Yeah. Okay. And, I was training and I was on the trails and there were other people on, and then I rang my bell aggressively and I was riding at speed, ringing my bell aggressively, and people were jumping out of the way. And then I turned aggressively, and I skidded and did all those mountain biking things that you do when you're riding aggressively. Yeah. And it was really interesting to me, with all the adrenaline and everything that was going on, that the reaction of the people around me was exactly the same that would be with the dog. Yeah. There was, I guess, I don't know, I would call it fear, but they were jumping out of the way and, acting as though I'm a rabid beast, riding a bike and I could hurt somebody. Yeah. It's like, well, this is true, but, if you would have gotten, somebody would have jumped out in the way trying to stop me or take something from me, there's a good chance that they would have been injured. Yeah. No, I have to say, the only species I think, I can say that, but with dogs, I haven't seen a dog who is just from his character aggressive, who just is this way. Like, I couldn't. But with humans, you can often say that. I think humans act aggressively. Well, there's a thought process with aggression. I'm having a bad day. Mm-hmm. Okay. When you basically say I'm having a bad day, or I'm going to do this with everything that I have, I think it's a different scenario with regard to, this is my food. I'm frightened. Fight or flight, all these instincts
Yeah, but then a lot of times it's defensive.
Yes.
It's like defending something, like be it himself or be it his family or us or whatever, or it's out of fear, or it's a reaction to somebody else acting in a way that's
Well, I don't know how aggression became such a major topic as a character trait as dogs. I think it has more to do with the tool set of the owner, because if you are not equipped to understand the dog's warning behaviors, then you are basically, let's call it an accomplice to the aggression. You basically set this dog up. Like, let's say I basically put a dog in a small yard, he's fenced up, and all he can do is look out the fence, run back and forth, and bark at these things that are going by. That's his life.
Yeah.
You have just made this dog territorial.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happens when he gets out? He's defending everything that he doesn't have.
Probably not when he gets out of his property, though.
Well, here's the thing. The dog is not equipped to deal with whatever the circumstance is, because he's been locked in this cage his whole life. Doesn't matter how gilded the cage is, it's still a cage. And then he is experiencing something new, whether it's new people, new animals. We had a client that told us about how they were walking this lovely dog, and she came across some chickens and she massacred them like it was nothing. I don't know if that was aggression so much as it was hunting behavior.
Yeah.
This dog was playing, was having fun.
With chickens?
Well, it wasn't fun for the chicken.
No.
But the dog was exhibiting a behavior that is inherent in predators.
Yeah.
I was hunting, I chased,
chicken
and
was
I
close
caught
enough,
this
and
chicken.
I caught it, and then a second one.
Well,
within 30 seconds.
But that was not aggression, I don't believe. I believe it was hunting behavior. When you identify it as hunting behavior, you're asking yourself, why did this dog attack? Why did the dog did not attack. What he did was he killed for food.
Yeah. No, I do think that especially with hunting or prey drive or hunting behavior, that I have heard people compare it to also an aggressive behavior, but I don't agree either. I don't think
I don't know how you call a behavior, like people do it too. They go to the supermarket and they select food, then they bring it home and they cook it.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that hunting behavior?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that aggressive?
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen the way some people eat, and I would call that aggressive.
Yeah.
And if you touch somebody's food while they're eating, there's a good chance that they're going to get aggressive with you. The thing about it is, when you consider that this is communication, because I have somebody who has been under the guise that every time the dog puts something in its mouth, whether it's pulling or whatever, it's aggression. Not realizing that this dog may be playing or maybe, doesn't understand his own strength or what. It's always labeled as aggression.
Yeah. I think the problem is really that we have this negative connotation as humans to think about aggression, while aggressive behavior, I think, is not just with dogs, but with all animals, really normal. In certain circumstances, you have to, otherwise you probably can't survive.
But here's the thing, isn't it a reaction rather than an action?
I think so. I think more often than not it is, but there is always a trigger though, however.
Okay, but see, as there is a trigger, is it inherent that when you say aggressive, it's spoken as though it is the most evil thing on the planet? It's just like saying eating is evil. This is the appropriate behavior when you put food in your mouth, is to chew it. And
I think aggression is, from a dog's point of view, definitely appropriate. Yeah, appropriate behavior.
But it's a form of communication as well. It's funny because when I see...
It's exactly a form of communication, and it's totally appropriate. Yeah, it's just us who we're shocked. We're shocked. And I find it so interesting to say we are so shocked that my dog can react, like show his teeth, growl or whatever, and snap at me. Well, what we do to our dogs is we do this. I mean, you see this all the time. Dogs being snatched around on the leash, or with being they want to sniff somewhere. They're like, no, come, let's go this way. I mean, we are actually the aggressors more often than not, I think. And for dogs being so patient with us, it's amazing to me.
Well, imagine identifying the aggression in an owner. Excuse me, sir, you just hit your dog because your dog, picked up something off the ground.
Yeah.
You snatched him.
We storm over there and we open their mouth and we try to, I mean, seriously, that's aggressive behavior. And dogs are still, most of the dogs still let it happen. I mean, more often than not, dogs are very patient in that sense.
Perhaps too patient.
Very too patient, yeah. Maybe people get too much of a langsam.
Well, you know what?
Like, maybe if people would see it more often, that dogs can react aggressively too, maybe it become more common.
Well,
people would get more used to it.
But here's what's funny to me. Why is it identified as bad when a dog communicates to you?
Yeah.
He doesn't speak your language. He's doing everything he can to communicate with you. And when he crosses the line, he's punished. Yeah. So when you cross the line, and you're punished.
Do it all the time, and you're punished suddenly, then it's a big shock to everybody. Like, how could the dog do this? Like when I take Tuco for a walk, our dog, and a neighbor, sees me and wants to come up to me and talk to me, it's not really possible because Tuco doesn't like people come up too close. So I have to tell him, like, look, you have to just keep your distance because otherwise he's just going to start barking. So why not, keep your distance, talk to each other if you have to.
Well, it's funny how 100-pound dog barking is different than when a Chihuahua is
Exactly,
barking.
But Chihuahuas get ignored or Swallows get ignored and people are like, whatever, he can't hurt me. Fortunately, with Tuco, they have a little more respect and they do stay away. But then the little dogs are being called, it's a bad dog, you should train him better,
Well, think about this. Okay, let's talk about aggressive behavior. Okay, if I were to take food from Tuco, I probably could do it because he knows.
He gives it to me if I ask him to.
Yeah, but here's what I find interesting. Okay, I can remember losing a loaf of bread.
Not losing.
Okay, well,
disappearing. A loaf of bread disappeared.
Kaya stole a loaf of bread
miraculously, including the wrapping.
And the funny thing about it was, there was no point in getting aggressive, but I could see if I were eating this bread, a dog came. Actually, I have had situations when I was at daycare and a dog jumped up on the table
and tried to steal your food. And you reacted aggressively. That moment was totally appropriate to tell his dog, look here, this is my food, not yours.
And she never did it again.
She never did it again, exactly. Yeah.
And the thing about it is, I wonder.
It's really interesting.
With regard to the correction, it's like, you wouldn't want this to happen to you, yet, when it happens to the dog, it's horrible. Oh my gosh, he's being aggressive. When the dog does it to me and I react, it's training. Yeah. Okay.
It's interesting because what other means do dogs have to tell somebody, stop this? You know what I mean? Because they actually, before they start snapping or biting, they have a lot of other things they're showing, but they're being ignored. Like this video I saw with somebody's trying to take a bone away from a dog. I mean, the thing is, the people approach this dog really slowly. The head is coming closer and closer. The dog is already, his eyes getting big. You can see the white around his eyes. He starts growling, pulls his teeth up, his lips up, and you can see his teeth. People don't stop. They're still going to take this bone because that's their goal, to take this bone from this dog. Well, and I'm thinking, why are you doing this?
My dog needs to learn to this.
And the thing he says in the video is, it's enough that this was a big bone. He shouldn't eat the whole thing right now. Well, then don't give him the whole thing. And break this bone up before and give him just part of it or give him a smaller bone. But if you give this dog a bone, it's his bone, period. You don't take it away unless he brings it to you, like Tuco does sometimes. And like, could you take this again so that nobody else gets it? He does that. But then it's his decision.
Well, the thing about it is, when you, I have heard aggression, fighting dogs, and what's funny to me is if the most trained fighting dogs that I've seen are like the little lap dogs that are so spoiled, that are so put in a position.
Yeah, but they're often being, like you say, spoiled. Like we know a couple of little dogs who are always being touched by strangers, you know. And at some point, the dog's going to say, "Enough is enough. I hate it."
It's like,
and then they're labeled aggressive because he's never done this before. Yeah, because he was too patient. He should have done it from the beginning.
Like, you're going to learn one way or the other that I'm not playing with you.
It's so strange that we think we can do anything with dogs, but they are not allowed to show their displeasure and their frustration with us. And sometimes this is the way they communicate. They have to show, you know, teeth or growl or bark or something. It's not a way. And I'm not disappointed when dogs are like, our two dogs had a couple of fights, you know, and I was present at that point. And it was, I mean, if anything, it was very interesting for me to see them in such a different state of mind, actually, to really see them being angry at each other. And even after had come, the situation had been was stopped, they weren't fighting anymore, the anger was still there for a while.
Yes.
It wasn't, it's like, I mean, I hear that sometimes, like, oh, dogs are so forgiving. Like, no, I'm not so sure that's so true. Because they really didn't like each other for a few days after this.
What's funny to me, though, is if Tuco doesn't like you, he will never
like you, exactly. Yeah? There's nothing you can do to make him like you. No.
Like, he has
Kaya's a bit easier.
He has a lot of patience for Kaya.
Yeah.
And he's a little bit more accepting with Kaya, but he won't.
He's more accepting with dogs anyway. He's not as accepting with people.
Well, here's the funny thing: he will accept nonsense from Kaya, and she can stay. But other dogs that he won't accept, if he says no, there's a huge no.
Yeah.
And then he'll walk away.
Yeah, that's the only thing that was the only way that the whole situation was diffused eventually is because he actually decided to walk away when those two were fighting. Because I could not. There's no way I could have held both dogs apart from each other, as big as they are. Right? It's only because I could hold Kaya.
Kaya's like what 40 kilos.
40 kilos, and I was able to.
Tuco's like 60 plus.
Exactly. So only because I was able to hold her, he actually walked away after so many minutes to say, like, okay, but I'm not keep watching you.
Well, it's funny because...
And he did. I mean, it wasn't pleasant for a couple of days, I would say. It was really like they were always eyeballing each other. And yeah.
But the thing about it is they express their displeasure in such a way. And as long as they are... Like, when Tuco does not feel like dealing with Kaya, Kaya leaves the room.
Yeah. She's very careful around him, actually. I have to say, she's very respectful. Really, I think 90% of the time she's very respectful around him. There's a couple of things when she doesn't care, but most of the time she's really quite good around him.
But here's what's funny, okay? We have about anywhere from 8 to 12 dogs at the daycare.
Mm.
And there is an understanding who you can play with, who you respect, what type of play is allowed.
So much, yeah.
And it's funny, it never devolves into aggression because I was, one client and myself were watching their dogs play.
Okay.
One of the dogs got overexcited and actually nipped, and it needs to be defined that a nip is not exactly a bite, but it's enough while you're playing to accidentally, pinch or
sure, it hurts
whatever.
Still. And it could actually end a game.
Yes.
Because the other dog could say, hey, I'm pissed, don't do that.
Now, I've heard too many people say that, biting. It's like, if you watch the way dogs play with one another, and you see, a lot has to do with their mouths. It's not just running.
Yes. Yeah.
And they're not upset. If if your best friend punches you in the shoulder a little bit too hard, you're going to say, hey, that hurt.
That was too much. Or pull your hair or something. Yeah.
Okay. And then you either stop that game or it becomes more than it should be, possibly.
Did they keep playing afterwards? Like,
well, yes.
I guess he nipped her a little bit too hard. And
nipped her a little bit. She got upset. She corrected him, apologized, and then they went right back to playing.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, it's
because it's not serious, because they both knew that this is not an aggressive behavior.
Yes.
Yeah, they both knew that, and he was just a little too wild. He gets overwhelmed sometimes.
Well, this is one of the things that I think that aggression brings out in people. They are overwhelmed and they stop thinking. I have watched people stand and watch their dog in this, let's call it aggressive behavior in situation, and they don't have the tools to either avoid the situation, get through the situation, or get out of the situation.
I think that is often the case, yes. I think that's why people are so afraid of aggression, because they don't know how to deal with it. Well, if it really happens, if they feel like there is a danger that somebody gets hurt, then a lot of people have no way. They don't know what to do in that moment.
They're not equipped to, and it's funny because
it is one of the most asked questions actually that we get is like, what do you do when they fight? Right?
Well, what's funny is, okay, I can remember training and looking for, in my training, I was always looking for two ways out. Where are the exits for this particular situation if it goes bad? Okay. I was watching a video that was the most hilarious and thought-provoking situation dealing with, large breed management or dog management. So, there was a gentleman with a small dog, and the big dog was off leash and was running toward his dog, and he picked up his dog. And my first thought is that's perhaps one of the worst things that you could do. Yeah. But then he took his dog, opened up a trash can, and threw him in the trash can.
Yeah. To save him.
Keep his dog safe.
Yeah.
And
that's a great idea.
All I could think of was this man was really thinking about protecting his dog.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Jumping on top of a car,
putting the dog on top of a car.
Something that keeps your dog safe, something that keeps you safe. These are tools. These are management tools. I don't suggest, hey, my dog is, being bad, so just throw him in the trash can. But if you were trying to save your dog's life,
I mean, that's still, of course, the dog's going to be all kind of like, what the hell just happened to me? But it's still better than being attacked by a dog, right? So,
and he probably might have fun in the trash can with all the things you could smell. But the thing about it is, this person was thinking, okay? In these situations that you would call it aggression, when the dog hasn't stopped thinking, he's reacting with his tools. Okay. When you stop using your tools, perhaps the situation is more likely to be worse than it should be or could be. Yeah. And it's so funny when to me, there's never a situation where you should stop thinking. Right. Yes. Don't panic. Yeah. Because that's when you stop thinking usually. Well, okay. We've been talking about aggression for a while. Okay. Let's get on to a more pleasant subject. What's for lunch? Let's see. I think I'll have a hamburger. There's enough dog food around. Well, I don't eat dog food, so... Hamburger? Forget about the dogs. Yeah, we know... Okay, real dog people. When you open your refrigerator and you see more dog food than people food, you're dog people. No space for your own food. Stop. Very nice. Well, you can eat your meat. I'm going to eat probably some vegan, we'll see. Veggies, beans. I got beans. Oh my God. Oh God, help me. Help! She's going for the beans again. That's aggression.